we've got episode 7 and 8 here of the Dynasty, and then wrap up with Curveball of the Week. But episode 7, I thought this story was hilarious. Was opening with Robert Kraft going over to Russia as being an ambassador with the White House and showing Vladimir Putin his Super Bowl ring, and Putin taking that as a gift, just puts it in his pocket and walks out. And then the White House, like Kraft trying to get the ring back, and the White House said, just saying that, tell them, for good relations with Russia, tell them that you gave it to him as a gift.
Could you imagine if the White House would have went to try to take that ring back, Dylan? Like World War I starts with one country assassinating another president, and then this country having that country's back, and yada, yada, yada. Hey, let's go to war. World War III starting in 2005 because Robert Kraft has his Super Bowl ring stolen, and the United States gets it back from Russia.
Yeah, well, Robert Kraft is the owner, so if he wants a new ring, he can just get one.
Just yes.
And then we get into Deflategate, which the Colts, they were tipped off from the Ravens, and really they alerted the NFL, and the only way they were going to find out about this. And Grant, I don't know when you watch this if you saw this too, but the way that the Colts could really get into this, which is absolutely laughable, and we'll talk about more, but all they needed to do was turn Tom Brady over. And they got the opportunity when Tom Brady got a pass intercepted. But, Grant, they show a close-up of the ball being snapped. And the officials missed a blatant hands-to-the-face call on the center. And realistically, if the refs call that, we know nothing about Deflategate.
Dylan, I missed that. Did they show that? Like in the broadcast? Yeah. Or like was it mentioned? Was it mentioned, or was you just saw the play happen? Like
I rewatched the play of when it was intercepted, and they showed the Colts defensive lineman just grabbing at the center's face mask.
I totally missed that. I had no idea. I thought it was fascinating. The Colts just needed to get their hands on a Patriots ball, but I didn't know that they missed a penalty, and then that we almost never knew about this absolute debacle that happened. No, I had no idea.
Which basically they finally admit that this was basically a sham, and this was only a big deal because they could use it to overshadow the CBA, the labor disputes in the NFL at the moment, and and the problem that they were facing with domestic violence. That's basically what it was. And it was, and they just speak in random terms. There's nothing conclusive about it. And and this is where I wish they would have waited like another 10, 15 years so everybody is removed from it, where people like Brady, Belichick, everybody else in there could actually discuss it at more of a more length, where there really is nothing else. Like everything, everybody, you take the emotion, everybody's removed from
everyone's
it. But
everyone's in the Hall of Fame, and the dust has settled.
Yeah. And with it all, it kind of overshadowed the Patriots going to the Super Bowl. Brady, that press conference, Belichick basically just cleaned his hands, said, I do nothing with the footballs. This has nothing to do with me. Don't ask me about it. And it talked about how it took a toll on Tom, because he can handle people going at him, but it was hard for him to watch his kids going to school and his kids dealing with it. And then, it gets, and Brady said that this was a game that he wanted to win more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of jumps around too. But when we talk about the game, let's talk about the Super Bowl. It's Al Michaels talking about how he always goes over and has like notes for each player. He said he didn't have a whole lot on Malcolm Butler because he didn't think he was going to play a whole lot, and nobody really expected him. Malcolm Butler was a rookie out of a D2 school.
Was it West Alabama?
Something like that, yeah. He was working at a Popeyes in Mississippi leading up to the draft before he got a call. And we've had this discussion. I think we're about the only podcast that says that there was no way that you can talk all you want about having beast mode, but there was no way that the way the formation was set up, the Patriots defense they were in, they weren't going to be able to run it. And Pete Carroll has gone into detail talking about it. At some point, they were going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah.
Or throw the ball on one of the downs, so they figured they'd just get it out of the way right away. But you talk about how Malcolm, the Patriot way about being prepared, doing the little things. And Butler noticed something on Russell, how he was looking over on that side a lot. And he's like, oh, they're coming to me. And as soon as he saw the ball, he broke on it and made the play. And it is more of a better play for Malcolm Butler, an undrafted rookie, to prepare for it, to be ready for it, and then actually go execute it. That isn't talked about enough.
Well, and because you hear the Patriots players talk about this all the time. Like this past week, Dylan, I just listened to Julian Edelman's Names with Games podcast, and he talked with Gronk about this game. And that whole week in practice, when Bill said, hey, goal line, three corners, Malcolm got beat on this every single play. And, what people don't realize is the Seahawks ran that play like 4 times in the regular season, and they scored all 4 times. And the fact that Malcolm got beat in practice every single day, but he never gave up on himself. And what's crazy, after that tip pass, where Kearse somehow comes down with it, Malcolm easily could have put his head in the dumps and said, you know what, I made a play, but someone else made a better play. I cost my team. It's not our year. But he had that mental toughness, and he made a play. So props to him on that. And also, no one talks about this, but Browner shut Lockett down. Like, there was no separation for Kearse, where Butler, he had a free reign. Perhaps props to Brandon Browner for jamming the hell out of Tyler Lockett at that Ricardo Lockett, at the line of scrimmage, and giving Butler a clear path to pick that ball off.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is there are advanced metric stats out there that say that Marshawn Lynch is similar with Derrick Henry within those short yardage situations.
Not guaranteed to score.
He struggled. He's not as good as you would think. So. But then it kind of gets back in once the season ends, the Wells report is released, and they find nothing conclusive. It was, more probable than not, or generally aware, but there's really nothing. And then they said that Brady destroyed his phone, which Bill Simmons talked about. There's no way in hell I would let the NFL look at my phone. Why?
Not a chance.
And go and find anything. So they got suspended, and Brady gets suspended for 4 games, and it was the way this is when you're the Patriots and when you're the top dog and you're the hunted, it's just similar, to like what Michigan is this year. It's because Michigan, they're going to look for every reason to downplay it, to minimize it, and it's just because they were too good. They couldn't beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were talking about how the ball boy would go into the bathroom before he would go after he'd get the ball from the officials. Well, nature happens. What do you got to do? You're going to take a piss? And if you've ever if you know anything about quarterbacks and their balls, they don't want them touched. They don't want them touched once they go and they give them the balls that they want to use in the game. And boy, my maturity is really showing talking about quarterbacks, how they don't want their balls touched. But like that is something like they don't want it. So like, I mean, if you're the ball boy, yeah, I would take those things with me because
Mhm.
do you know who the quarterback is going to go after? Especially,
You.
I don't. Yeah, and I don't know if I want Tom Brady going. I've seen him angry. I've seen Psycho Tom, and I don't want that happening to me. It's funny when it happened to other people, but when it's happening to you, that's a different story.
It's not so much fun, is it?
And just all the things that came out of it, like the kid doing science projects, talking about how the weather could have impacted the ball, and the Colts were
Yeah.
also having some under-deflated balls, which didn't get mentioned there. But my favorite part of this episode was when the Barstool employees, and I don't know, I kind of remember when it actually happened, but that was kind of before really Barstool exploded. But Dave Portnoy being the guy from Bostonian, and the rest of the guys that he had in working with him in Boston is they go to New York, they demand to speak to Goodell, and when they don't, they handcuff themselves and they end up getting arrested and spending the day in jail. I don't know about you, Grant, but when I was watching that part, I was belly laughing him telling this story.
Well, that was the most Barstool thing of all time. Like, there's no way in hell you're going to get a chance to speak to Goodell. Security's not going to let that happen. And even if you somehow get on an elevator, you're going to have to go through 20 different people. But just for them to stick to their guns and be Boston through and through, for them then to get arrested in New York City, it was good. It was good.
And then it basically concludes with them saying Tom wasn't going to be Tom. They upheld his suspension, and that's when Tom talked about I was coming back with a vengeance, and this is where we'll just get into episode 8, and it talks about how without Tom they go 3-1, and Tom during it was not doing well. Like he was kind of saw this is how he got his job. And he just kept, when he got back, he was back with a vengeance. He was, people were saying that he was going to plateau. Max Kellerman, all-time bad take. And rightfully so. Tip your cap to Jimmy G because he played well. Guys rallied around him. He had a great training camp, and he seemed like he was ready for the moment. And then that excitement grew after they beat Arizona, who was at that time a game
they were in the NFC title game.
We're a game away from the Super Bowl, and when they were interviewing Edelman and Gronk, they talk about how in the locker room after that game it felt like it was like a playoff win, and then they talk about that week Tom Brady was back at Michigan. And talking about how that was the first time he's been back since he was there because he had a bit of a strained relationship there because a lot of people wanted Drew Henson, the bigger, sexier guy, to be the quarterback. And they interviewed one of his friends at Michigan who talked about the birth of the Tom Brady Death Stare is when it was the year he was starting. And Drew Henson was the local guy from, I think, somewhere in the state of Michigan. I want to say he was actually from Detroit here, but when they had like their Meet the Wolverines and everybody was signing autographs, Drew Henson was at the end zone and there was a line for his autograph at the 50, and Tom at that point signed 2 people, and all Tom was doing was just staring at that line. And it goes back to his origins of where that started, where he got that fire, that competitive, and I thought he had the great expression or great acronym of FEA, which is fuck them all. They ain't cheering for us anyways, so who cares? Let's embrace being the villain. And then this is where it kind of starts moving over, where they talk about how, Bill's relationship with Tom was held to such a higher standard. And Tom really, it seems like in his entire New England career was just looking for Bill's approval. It's almost similar to what Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw had with the Steelers, where Terry Bradshaw talks about how, he did everything he could. Like he just wanted to hear a pat on the back. Good job, Tom. But it seemed like anytime there would ever be meetings, Bill would just rip Tom to shreds about Wes Welker described it the best. It was just kind of described him as that abused dog who would come with the tail between his legs, like, don't are you gonna yell at me?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was on perfect display after that Arizona win when they were in that locker room and Garoppolo played well. Look how happy Belichick was. You could see the smile on his face, the way he was looking at G. They were hugging. Hey, good job, buddy. Great job. Good win. That's a hell of an effort out there. Belichick has a look on his face like, yep, I did it again. I found this guy in the second round from Eastern Illinois. He's going to be my quarterback for the next 12 years. And people are going to say, he didn't need Brady. That was all Belichick. So that was clear as day in that episode where you're just like, yeah, Belichick truly did love Jimmy G, and he thought he had the guy. And he would have been fine moving off Brady 2 years earlier than what he did.
Yeah. And then they still, with all that, Psycho Tom out they make it to Super Bowl 51. And the Boston Globe headline, because they had to have it printed before the Super Bowl was over. It was at the time, it was early in the fourth quarter where it was 28-3, and it was quoted as a bitter end. And at that point, Scott Pioli, who was earlier in the first couple of episodes, was talking about how he was in a press box with a bunch of Falcons executives, the Blank family, and everybody is all excited. They're happy. They're high-fiving. They're cheering. And Pioli is the only one that's in a mess. That's just, and people are telling him. Somebody told him, patted him on the back. He's like, hey,
loosen up.
Relax. We're up 28-3. Ease up. And he just lost. He's like, you guys don't understand what you're dealing with. This guy is Freddy Krueger, and he's going to get us all. And, well, we all know what happened in that 28-3 game. And they talk about how the team believed because Tom believed he was smooth. And, one of the biggest signature plays in that game was the Edelman catch, where, in the previous two Super Bowls, you see just the bad luck that the Patriots had with catches. Mm-hmm. Edelman talks about how he ran a terrible route and it should have been picked. And
it went right off the safety's hands.
Yep. And I forgot that it did go off the safety's hands. And after that, they talk about how, Teddy Bruschi in the Super Bowl against the Giants, how they talk about that, having that momentum, all that juice of like, they know what that feeling is. It felt like it got back to the Patriots, and it felt like they were going to go tie the game and then go on and win it, which they did.
Well,
and then,
Dylan, real quick, one thing. The one play in that Super Bowl no one talks about, and this is every NFL comeback of all time when you need a big play, you need a defensive play. You need a defensive play or a play on special teams. And Dante Hightower delivered. When he came off the edge untouched and destroyed Ryan. That's how they got that second touchdown with such a short field. If it wasn't for that play, and the Patriots, it's not like they were going down chunk plays, 07 Patriots scoring in 5 plays. It was 8 to 10 to 12, 13, 14 play drives. Had Hightower not strip sacked Ryan, and they got that short field, the Patriots in that game probably run out of time. So that's the one forgotten play, but man, Hightower coming off the edge and getting Ryan, was that also that defensive play that I think really sparked this team too. Like, okay, hey, at this point we're down 9-28, but we're going to do this thing. And after that, they got a touchdown, right? And it was 16-18, or maybe they got a field goal.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. But
they got a field. I think they got a field goal.
They got a field goal, but yeah, they needed those 3 points because they were still down by 16. But that's the one play no one talks about. But man, Dante delivered, and he delivered in Super Bowl 49 too, with that tackle on Marshawn at the 1 yard line to set up the Malcolm Butler interception. So, let's not forget about Dante Hightower being a huge difference maker in those 2 Super Bowls.
Absolutely. And then Brady talks about this one felt like closure. It was he he did everything for Bill, and then it kind of felt like he was going to go out and kind of do what he wanted to accomplish, which was play to his mid-40s. Belichick had some other thing, and this kind of sets up the two final episodes of kind of the downfall of it, where it's two alphas and they're both just on a collision course. The old Monday Night Football, where they would always crush their helmets together before the game started. You remember that? That's what this episode is going to be, I think, these last two. But and very interesting. We're going to find out of why the Malcolm Butler benching, of why that actually happened, why he was benched in Super Bowl 52.
I think we are, Dylan, because I looked ahead at all the episodes just to see the details, like what they're going to talk about, and they mentioned Belichick makes a bad decision, and he has to live with, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the Malcolm Butler benching.
Yeah. Oh, it has to be. So I'm curious to see if Belichick will talk about this. I'm curious to see what Malcolm Butler has to say about this. I'm curious to see what Brady and the rest of the guys on that team, and see how that affected them mentally.
I want to see like what Dev is going to say, McCourty, because he's really been the only defensive guy they talked to, and he was the leader of that defense, and he was the leader of that secondary, and that secondary was getting torched all day, because their backup corners could not cover the deep shot. So I really kind of hope they talk not only with Butler but Dev, because I want that defensive leader perspective from that.